The sun had just started to rise over the quiet suburban neighborhood. Birds chirped softly, and the morning air was cool and calm. Everything seemed peaceful. But not everything was as calm as it seemed. On one street, tension was brewing, and trouble was quietly taking shape. A sleek black car rolled slowly down the main road of the neighborhood. The driver, calm and confident, kept his eyes on the street ahead. He looked like an ordinary man, just another resident on his way to work. But he was far from ordinary. He was the law in the area, the sheriff. And today, he was about to discover that the neighborhood's homeowners association, or HOA, had something very different planned for him. The HOA had always been strict. Signs warning speed limit 15 miles per hour and neighborhood watch active were everywhere. Most people followed the rules quietly, too afraid to speak up. But the HOA president was different. He liked control. He liked power. And he didn't like anyone who ignored his rules. Lately, he had been complaining about reckless drivers on the street. Little did he know, the person he was targeting was no ordinary driver. As the black car moved slowly down the street, a few HOA members were hiding behind trees and bushes. Their eyes were fixed on the road. One of them held a strange object, a spike strip. It was black, with sharp metal points, designed to stop any car that drove over it. Their plan was simple: the next speeding driver would hit the strip, and they could call the police. The HOA president whispered, "This time, we'll stop them for good." The other members nodded, trying to hide their excitement. They thought they were smart. They thought they were in control. But they had no idea who was driving that black car. The sheriff glanced at his rearview mirror. Something felt strange. He noticed shadows moving on the side of the road. His instincts told him that someone was up to no good. But he stayed calm. He knew he had to handle this carefully. One wrong move, and the situation could get dangerous. The camera zooms in on the car's tires as it approaches the part of the street where the spike strip had been laid. The morning sunlight glints off the metal points. The HOA members hold their breath, thinking their trap will work perfectly. Inside the car, the sheriff's hands tighten slightly on the steering wheel. His eyes scan the street quickly. He noticed the shiny black object on the road, too smooth, too deliberate to be random. A small smirk appeared on his face. "They really think they can catch me," he whispered to himself. As he neared the spike strip, the tension in the air grew. Birds stopped chirping. The street seemed to hold its breath. Every second felt longer than the last. The HOA members exchanged excited glances, sure that victory was near. But the sheriff didn't panic. He had been trained for situations like this. Slowly, he steered the car slightly to the left, avoiding the spike strip completely. The tires rolled smoothly over the asphalt, leaving the sharp metal points untouched. The HOA members gasped. "What? How did he?" one of them muttered. The HOA president's face turned red with anger. He had been sure that their plan would work. But someone had outsmarted them before the plan even started. The sheriff drove past the trap calmly, as if nothing had happened. His eyes flicked to the bushes where the HOA members were hiding. He recognized them, but they didn't recognize him. They were so focused on the driver that they didn't notice the badge under his jacket, or the uniform hidden in his car. "This is going to be interesting," he thought. The camera pans to a close-up of his eyes, sharp, alert, and full of confidence. The audience knows something the HOA doesn't: this is no ordinary driver. As the car continued down the street, the HOA members began whispering, trying to come up with a new plan. They didn't understand what had just happened. Their trap had failed, and their frustration was growing. But they had no idea that they were now dealing with the law itself. The tension in the neighborhood was rising. Neighbors peered out from their windows, curious about the commotion. The black car moved silently, but there was a sense of power in the way it glided down the road. It was a calm, controlled presence in the middle of chaos. Finally, the sheriff reached a quiet corner of the street and stopped the car for a moment. He looked back at the spike strip he had just avoided. He smiled slightly, knowing this was only the beginning. The HOA thought they could control everything. But they had no idea who they were dealing with. The camera zooms in on the spike strip again, showing it in sharp detail. The audience can feel the danger, the tension, and the suspense. Then, a final close-up of the sheriff's eyes, full of determination and intelligence, hints that the story is only getting started. In the next moments, the neighborhood will never be the same. The HOA will plan, the sheriff will prepare, and the audience will be on the edge of their seats, waiting to see what happens next. One thing is certain, the quiet morning is over. Something big is coming. And no one, not even the HOA, will see it coming. The sun was higher now, but the neighborhood still seemed quiet. For most people, it looked like a normal morning. But today, the quiet was dangerous. The HOA had failed at their first plan, and anger was brewing behind closed doors. The black car, sleek and silent, turned down another street. Inside, the sheriff sat relaxed, almost casual, sipping coffee. But his eyes were sharp. Every shadow, every movement, every sound in the neighborhood was noticed. He had driven these streets many times, but today felt different. He could sense that the HOA wasn't finished yet. Meanwhile, the HOA members were regrouping. They were nervous, glancing at each other in frustration. The president's face was red with anger. "We can't let him get away again," he said, slamming his fist on the table. "Set up another trap. Something he won't expect this time." The others nodded nervously. They whispered among themselves, laying out plans with hurried hands. But they didn't know that the person they were targeting wasn't just any driver. The sheriff had seen their every move, and he had a plan of his own. The camera cuts to the streets again. The HOA had placed another spike strip, this time hidden behind a curve, with branches and leaves covering it. They were certain it would work. The tension in the air was thick. Every rustle of leaves made them jump. The sheriff approached the curve, his car moving slowly and smoothly. He noticed something unusual on the side of the road, a small shadow, an unnatural shape. His hand rested lightly on the steering wheel, ready. He didn't panic. Instead, he smiled quietly. "They really think they can stop me," he muttered. Suddenly, the car's sensors, the sheriff had gadgets even ordinary people didn't see, alerted him to the hidden spike strip. He slowed down just enough, carefully steering around it without disturbing a single leaf. The strip was untouched. Perfectly hidden, but useless against him. From behind the bushes, the HOA members gasped. "No way!" "How did he see it?" one whispered, eyes wide. The president's jaw dropped. Their plan had failed again. They had underestimated the driver completely. The sheriff glanced toward the bushes, where the HOA was hiding, but they didn't notice him noticing them. He tapped the steering wheel twice, almost playfully, as if saying, "I see you." The audience felt a shiver of excitement. Here was someone who was calm, clever, and fully in control. The black car moved forward, the road stretching ahead like a stage set for a showdown. The HOA members were scrambling now, trying to come up with another plan. Their frustration was turning into panic. They whispered furiously to each other, unaware that every word was being silently observed by the sheriff. Then came the twist, the moment that would shock the audience. A close-up shot of the sheriff's badge under his jacket revealed the truth. He was not just a careful driver, he was the law itself. The HOA, thinking they were clever, had been targeting the sheriff without realizing it. The camera switches between the sheriff's calm face and the HOA's panicked expressions. The contrast is sharp. Calm versus chaos. Control versus fear. The audience can feel the power shifting in the story. The sheriff spoke softly, almost to himself, time to teach them a lesson, but not yet. His words were calm, but the tension in the air was electric. The audience knows something big is coming, but the HOA still has no clue. As he drove past the curve, the street looked peaceful again. Neighbors peeked from their windows, curious about the previous chaos. But they had no idea what had just happened, or who had been in that black car. The sheriff had not only avoided danger but had turned the situation into his advantage. Finally, the car stopped at a quiet corner. The sheriff stepped out, casually checking the spike strip from a distance. He took out his phone, snapping a few pictures as evidence. The audience could sense his careful planning. He wasn't just avoiding traps, he was preparing for the moment when the HOA would learn the truth. A final close-up shows the HOA members, hidden behind bushes, whispering nervously. The camera then focuses on the sheriff's eyes, calm and confident, as he surveys the neighborhood. The suspense hangs in the air. Everyone knows something is coming, but no one knows exactly what. This part ends with a silent shot of the street, the spike strip still lying there, the HOA watching nervously, and the sheriff disappearing from sight. The tension is perfect. The audience is left thinking, what will he do next? How will he deal with them? The day was slowly turning into afternoon. Sunlight poured over the quiet neighborhood, but the calm was only on the surface. Behind closed doors, a storm of plans and frustration was brewing. The HOA president sat at his desk, staring at the black car's empty streets. His hands were tense, and his face was red. "We can't let him get away again," he said sharply, glancing at the small group of HOA members huddled around him. "He's making us look weak." One member nervously tapped on a laptop. Maybe we can set another trap," she suggested, but her voice lacked confidence. The president slammed his hand on the table. "No! This has to be smarter. This time, we make sure he never expects it." His eyes narrowed. "I want cameras. I want barriers. I want everything. He won't know what hit him." While the HOA plotted inside, the neighborhood outside seemed peaceful, but every corner was now under secret surveillance. Little hidden cameras were installed on trees and lampposts. Small spikes were hidden behind leaves. Even the manholes were checked for possible speed bumps that could catch a car off guard. The HOA was desperate, clever, and getting reckless. Meanwhile, the sheriff watched everything from a distance. He had already noticed the first spike strip, and he knew they would not stop there. Sitting quietly in his car, he smiled slightly. The HOA thought they were clever. They thought no one knew their moves. But he knew. The camera switches between the sheriff's calm face and the HOA members' nervous faces. He watched as they mapped out the street, placing markers, pointing at corners, whispering secret plans. Every gesture, every step, every muttered word was being carefully observed by the sheriff. One HOA member, the president's closest aide, nervously asked, "Are we going too far? What if something goes wrong?" The president glared at her. "Nothing will go wrong. Just follow the plan. We catch him this time, no mistakes. Understand?" Outside, the black car glided silently down the street. The sheriff's eyes flicked to each suspicious shadow. He noticed the movement of bushes, the sudden glint of sunlight on metal, the faint smell of fresh asphalt where spikes had been placed. Every detail mattered. The suspense built when the HOA decided to make the trap personal. They wanted to humiliate the driver. A fake warning sign was placed with a camera to record his reaction. They wanted footage of him breaking rules so they could finally prove they were in control. But the sheriff, of course, anticipated this. He slowed down, looked at the fake sign, and casually nodded as if he were agreeing with it. Then he quietly steered around the hidden trap again, leaving the HOA completely confused. Inside the HOA office, frustration was mounting. "He's too careful," one member shouted. "We can't catch him." The president slammed his hands on the desk again. "Then we need something bigger. Something that will finally make him stop." He leaned closer to the group, whispering his next plan. The audience hears it, but the sheriff already knows what they are thinking. He smiles quietly, a plan forming in his mind. The suspense is heightened by the contrast. The HOA is frantic, desperate, and plotting. The sheriff is calm, confident, and one step ahead. The audience feels the tension building like a storm ready to explode. Finally, the sheriff steps out of his car, just for a moment, walking casually near a corner where the HOA has been hiding cameras. He takes a quick photo with his phone, capturing evidence of their schemes. The audience realizes, he is not only avoiding their traps, he is preparing for the moment when they will have to face him. The part ends with a close-up of the HOA president's face. Sweat drips from his forehead. He glares at the empty street, muttering, "Next time, we catch him. We have to." The camera pans to the empty road, quiet and peaceful again. But the tension is electric. The audience knows the story is far from over. The black car disappears from view, leaving the neighborhood in a false calm. The audience is left thinking, what clever trap will they try next? And how will the sheriff respond? The sun was slowly setting over the neighborhood. Shadows stretched across the streets, making every corner look mysterious. Most residents had gone inside, leaving the streets quiet. But tonight, the real action was about to begin. Inside a small, unassuming garage at the edge of the neighborhood, the sheriff was preparing. His car was parked neatly in the corner, its black paint blending with the night. On the hood lay tools, gadgets, and a small radio. Everything was ready. Every step he would take had been planned carefully. The sheriff glanced at the street through a small window. In the distance, he could see the HOA office still lit, the president and his team still plotting. They thought they had control. They thought he had no idea what they were planning next. But the sheriff knew. He had already seen every trap they tried today. He had noticed every hidden camera, every spike strip, every shady corner. And now, he was ready. He opened a small case in his garage and pulled out a few items. A small remote-controlled device, a hidden camera, and a notebook filled with observations. Each trap the HOA had set today was recorded in detail. Every mistake they made, every hesitation, every moment of panic was noted. He smiled slightly. "They're so confident, they don't even know who they're messing with," he whispered. Outside, a faint rustling of leaves signaled the HOA members patrolling the streets. They were testing their traps again, this time placing small objects on the road and setting up hidden cameras. The president thought tonight would finally be the night they would catch the driver. The sheriff watched quietly. He wasn't angry, and he wasn't worried. He was ready. Tonight, he would let them think they had the advantage, but in reality, he was the one in full control. Every move they made was already countered in his mind. He started to plan his path. Every street, every corner, every alley was mapped in his mind. The spike strips could be avoided, cameras could be disabled, and even the fake warning signs could be used against them. He was preparing not just to avoid danger, but to turn it into an advantage. He picked up his radio and tested a small signal device. A faint beep confirmed it was working. It would allow him to track hidden cameras and even monitor the HOA members' movements without them knowing. As he worked, the sheriff thought about the strategy. "Patience," he said softly. "They will make a mistake. And when they do, it will be perfect." The audience sees him placing small markers on the map of the neighborhood, each one marking a trap, a hiding spot, or a camera. It's like watching a chess master plan his moves. Each piece is carefully thought out, each step calculated. Finally, he glanced at his car again. Inside, everything was ready for action. He had a dash camera to record the HOA, extra lights to illuminate the streets if needed, and even a quiet horn to alert him to sudden dangers. Everything was simple, yet effective. The suspense builds as he puts on his jacket and steps outside. The neighborhood looks peaceful, almost asleep. But the air is thick with tension. The HOA doesn't know he's watching, planning, and ready. They think the game is theirs, but in reality, the sheriff is the one holding all the cards. A soft breeze rustles the leaves. In the distance, faint shadows of the HOA members can be seen checking their traps. They are unaware that every step they take, every whisper they make, is being quietly recorded and countered. The sheriff smiles slightly, his eyes sharp and alert. The part ends with a close-up of the sheriff's eyes, calm but focused, almost glowing in the dim light. The audience can feel it, the next move will be clever, unexpected, and unstoppable. The calm before the storm is over. The stage is set, and the real game is about to begin. The screen fades slightly to black, leaving the audience on the edge of their seats. The question hangs, how will the sheriff finally confront the HOA? What clever plan does he have next? Night had fully settled over the neighborhood. Streetlights cast long, eerie shadows across the roads, making every corner look mysterious and dangerous. The HOA members were restless, moving quietly along the streets, checking the traps they had set. Tonight, they thought, was the night they would finally catch the driver. Meanwhile, the black car appeared silently at the entrance of the neighborhood. Its headlights were dim, blending perfectly with the shadows. The sheriff was behind the wheel, calm, confident, and fully aware of every trap ahead. His eyes scanned the street, analyzing every corner, every bush, every suspicious movement. The HOA members crouched behind a row of bushes near a curve in the road. A new spike strip was laid carefully across the street, covered with leaves and small branches. They whispered excitedly. "This time, he can't escape," one of them muttered. The president nodded, gripping a flashlight like it was a weapon. But the sheriff was already several steps ahead. As the car approached the curve, he slowed down slightly, just enough to avoid detection. A small gadget under the dashboard beeped quietly, alerting him to the exact location of the hidden spike strip. With precise control, he steered the car around it, leaving the sharp metal points untouched. From the bushes, the HOA members gasped. "What? How?" the president shouted, but no one knew how he had done it. The sheriff drove past slowly, his car gliding silently. Then he stopped suddenly, a few meters ahead, as if waiting for someone. He stepped out carefully, pulling a small camera from his pocket. With a calm, controlled motion, he started filming the HOA members' frantic faces. Every gasp, every whisper, every panicked gesture was captured. The HOA members froze. Their plan was crumbling, but they didn't realize the sheriff was not just avoiding their traps, he was gathering evidence. His calm presence made them uneasy, but they had no idea who he really was. The president's face turned red with anger. "Step out! Show yourself," he yelled. But the sheriff didn't move. Instead, he spoke slowly, clearly, almost teasingly. "I think you've been a little too busy setting traps, haven't you?" The members froze. Their eyes widened in confusion. Who are you?" one of them stammered. The sheriff smiled faintly and reached into his jacket, revealing his badge. "I'm the sheriff," he said, calmly. "And you've been breaking the law trying to trap me." The president's jaw dropped. "No, that's impossible," he whispered, disbelief written all over his face. The tension in the air was electric. The HOA members had spent days trying to catch a driver, thinking they were clever and in control. But now, they realized the person they had been trying to trap was the law itself. Panic replaced their confidence. The sheriff didn't shout or threaten. Instead, he used quiet authority. "You don't get to control the streets with traps and cameras," he said. "I suggest you stop before someone gets hurt or worse." His eyes scanned each member, calm but firm, leaving no room for argument. The president tried to argue, but his words fell flat. The sheriff stepped closer, recording every reaction. He had outsmarted them, not with violence, but with intelligence and patience. Every trap they had set, every plan they had made, was useless against someone who knew the rules and the law. Finally, the sheriff returned to his car. The HOA members watched in stunned silence as he drove away slowly, leaving them in the shadows of their own failure. The evidence he collected would ensure that no one could deny what had happened tonight. The camera zooms in on the spike strip left on the road, the symbol of their failed plans. Then it cuts to the sheriff's calm, confident eyes as he drives off into the night. The audience can feel the tension, the triumph, and the clever strategy that turned the entire situation in his favor. The night ends with the neighborhood quiet again, but the HOA members are left shaken, confused, and completely aware that they underestimated the law. The suspense lingers, leaving the audience eager for what will happen next. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the blinds of the HOA office. For the HOA members, it should have been a normal day. But the air was heavy with tension. The president paced back and forth, muttering under his breath. Something didn't feel right. The night before, their traps had failed. Again. And worse, they didn't even understand how. Their pride had been shattered, and confusion replaced confidence. One of the members finally broke the silence. I checked the footage from the cameras. "Look at this," she said, shaking slightly as she handed over a tablet. The president grabbed it. His eyes widened as he saw the black car carefully avoiding every spike strip. Every move was deliberate, smooth, and calculated. Then came the moment that froze everyone in the room. A badge flashed under the driver's jacket. The sheriff. "No, it can't be," the president whispered, disbelief in his voice. The screen showed the sheriff calmly navigating the traps, taking notes, and even filming them while they hid in the shadows. The realization hit them like a lightning strike. Every plan they had made, every trap they had set, every sneaky camera, they had been outsmarted by the very person they were trying to catch. The sheriff wasn't just a driver. He was the law. Panic spread through the room. We were trying to trap the sheriff," one member stammered. "He saw everything. He recorded everything." The president sank into his chair, rubbing his face in frustration. His carefully constructed control over the neighborhood had crumbled in one night. The HOA members glanced at each other, fear replacing their earlier arrogance. For the first time, they realized that their power was meaningless against someone who knew the rules and the law. Meanwhile, the neighborhood outside seemed peaceful, almost unaware of the chaos inside the HOA office. But every move of the HOA had been recorded. Every hidden camera and trap had become evidence against them. The sheriff, back in his car, watched from a distance as the HOA struggled with their realization. He didn't need to confront them aggressively. His calm intelligence and strategic planning had already done the work. The HOA now understood that underestimating the law had consequences. A member of the HOA finally spoke, her voice trembling. We went too far. We shouldn't have tried this." The president remained silent, staring at the tablet. His anger and embarrassment were mixed with fear. He had thought he was clever, that he could control the streets, control the residents, even control the drivers. But the sheriff had shown him that no trap, no plan, no intimidation could outsmart the law. The sheriff drove slowly down the street, watching the HOA from a safe distance. His expression was calm, but his eyes showed a quiet satisfaction. Every misstep of the HOA had been documented. Every overconfident move had been noted. They had learned their lesson, just the way he wanted. The camera cuts between the sheriff's calm driving and the HOA members frantically discussing how to fix their mistakes. The contrast is striking: calm, strategic power versus chaotic fear. The audience feels the tension, the shift in control, and the satisfaction of justice being served cleverly. Finally, the president spoke again, his voice low. We underestimated him. Completely." The sheriff's eyes, seen through the rearview mirror, reflected determination and authority. He didn't need to shout, fight, or threaten. The HOA had already realized the truth: they were powerless against someone who knew the law inside out. The part ends with a close-up of the sheriff's car disappearing into the distance. The neighborhood appears calm once again, but the lesson has been learned. The HOA members are left shaken, aware that their arrogance and schemes have failed. The audience is left on edge, waiting for the final part: how the sheriff resolves the situation and restores order, bringing the story to a clever and satisfying conclusion. Night had fully fallen over the neighborhood. The streets were quiet, but the tension lingered like a shadow. The HOA members were still inside their office, staring at the evidence on their screens. They had finally realized the truth: the person they had tried to trap was the sheriff himself. Their arrogance and schemes had failed completely. Meanwhile, the sheriff drove slowly through the neighborhood, his car moving like a silent shadow. His calm eyes scanned the streets, noting every corner, every streetlight, every trap that had been set. Tonight wasn't about punishment, it was about teaching a lesson. He parked his car near the HOA office and stepped out, moving with quiet authority. The cool night air carried the faint sound of leaves rustling, but otherwise, the street was silent. The HOA members froze as they saw him approaching. There was no fear in his movements, only control. The president tried to speak, but the sheriff raised a hand. "Stop. Listen." His voice was calm, but every word carried weight. "You've been trying to control something that isn't yours. You've been breaking the law while thinking you were clever. But I've seen everything. The HOA members exchanged nervous glances. Their schemes, traps, and cameras, every single plan had been outsmarted. The sheriff walked slowly around them, not in anger, but with a quiet authority that left no room for argument. "I'm not here to punish," he continued. "I'm here to make sure you understand your limits. Neighborhoods are for people, not control. Rules are for safety, not power games." His eyes scanned each member, calm yet piercing. The president swallowed hard. We didn't know," he began, but the sheriff cut him off gently. "You didn't think. That's the problem. You underestimated the law, and you underestimated me. Now, you must accept the truth." Then came the clever part. The sheriff revealed the footage from his dash camera. Every trap, every hidden camera, every movement of the HOA was documented. He showed them exactly how they had been outsmarted, all with calm precision. The members could only stare, realizing that their own actions had created their downfall. The sheriff smiled faintly, giving them one final warning. "Learn from this. Stop trying to control what isn't yours. Respect the rules, respect the people, and remember, arrogance doesn't protect you. Awareness and respect do." The HOA members nodded silently. They were shaken, embarrassed, and finally aware that they had been completely outplayed. The president's face turned pale, but he understood. The lesson had been delivered not with violence, but with intelligence, patience, and clever planning. The sheriff returned to his car, his calm movements leaving a lasting impression. He didn't need to shout or enforce punishment. The lesson had been taught. The neighborhood was safe again, order restored not through fear, but through strategy and wisdom. As he drove away, the camera followed his car, disappearing into the night. The neighborhood streets were quiet, peaceful, and safe once more. The HOA members watched from their office, finally humbled and aware of their own mistakes. The story ends with a quiet shot of the street, empty but full of lessons learned. The sheriff's eyes in the rearview mirror reflect intelligence, calm authority, and a subtle satisfaction. He had restored order, taught the HOA a lesson, and proven that patience, strategy, and the law always win. The audience is left with a satisfying conclusion: cleverness and patience can overcome arrogance, and true authority doesn't need to shout, it just needs to act wisely.